It's the Go Gopher Podcast with Mike Grimm, episode number 156. I am Mike Grimm, voice of the Golden Gophers, and welcome back to the podcast. The Golden Gopher softball team is set to open its season this weekend at a tournament in Arizona. Minnesota head coach Piper Ritter embarks on her 5th season at the helm of the Golden Gophers with sights set on returning to the NCAA tournament. Piper will join us on the Go Gopher Podcast this week to preview the upcoming season and give us the main storylines to watch for. Exciting times, warmer weather on the way, and Gopher softball opening the season. Stick around, you're going to enjoy our conversation. The Go Gopher Podcast is presented by alumni-owned Sunbelt Business Advisors and True North Mergers and Acquisitions. If you're a business founder planning to exit your business, start by contacting Sunbelt Business Advisors and True North Mergers and Acquisitions. Sunbelt serves more businesses up to $5 million in revenue than anyone, and True North M&A serves companies with revenues up to $150 million. Get a confidential, no-cost, no-obligation business valuation started today. Make the most of your life's work. Visit sunbeltminnesota.com or tnma.com today. Our thanks to Brian Slipka for leading that entire group. Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union is also a big sponsor of the Go Gopher Podcast. Life math is complicated, and Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union makes it easier with local financial experts available to help in person or virtually. Go to affinityplus.org/Go Gophers for more info. That's affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. They have an award-winning mobile app, so check that out as well. The Go Gopher Podcast is also presented by OnX Maps. Find out how to download the OnX Fish app for free by listening to the Go Gopher Podcast. We're podcasting episode 156 from the Aquarius Home Services studios. We invite you to subscribe to the Go Gopher Podcast. It's free to do so. You can also go back and listen to previous Go Gopher podcasts. Last episode, for example, we had a terrific interview with the newest Golden Gopher College Football Hall of Famer, Greg Esslinger. Go back and have a listen. This week, we're talking Golden Gopher softball with head coach Piper Ritter. She'll give us a season preview when we come back.
I'm Clay Geary, walk-on turned scholarship wide receiver for Gopher football.
And I'm Ben Utek, U of M alumni, Super Bowl champion, and Tony Dungy Uncommon Award winner.
We understand championship culture, which is why we're part of the True North family of companies.
True North invests in only elite teams, like the champion team at Sunbelt Business Advisors, Minnesota's largest seller of companies. To learn more about True North and our diverse family of independently owned companies, visit TrueNorthEquityPartners.com.
Keep the good times rolling without the regrets. Giggly THC beverages are your go-to for bold flavor and smooth vibes. Zero alcohol, no bad decisions. Just THC-infused cocktails, seltzers, and teas packed with natural ingredients and performance-boosting superfoods like ashwagandha and ginseng. Find Giggly at over 500 locations like Total Wine, MGM, and Cub Foods, or shop online at giggly.com. That's GIGLI.com. Ready to upgrade your drink game? Use the code Giggly North, as in Giggly Talk North. Giggly North, GIGLI North, for 50% off your first order. Giggly, sip smarter, feel better.
It's episode 156, the Go Gopher Podcast, and when we start talking softball, baseball, and some other spring sports, that means it's good news. One, because it's softball season. Two, warmer weather's on the way, even though as we talk on this Thursday morning, I had to scrape my windshield off this morning here in the Twin Cities. Piper Ritter is the head coach of the Golden Gopher softball team. Her team, as we talk on this Thursday, will open tomorrow at a tournament in Arizona. I almost said California. That comes up a little later. You'll be in Arizona this weekend. Hopefully that's where you know you're headed.
Yes.
Yeah. Good to see you.
Good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for joining us. We always enjoy getting a season preview from you, and I know that the fall season, you got your, the scrimmages and the games and the practices in, and now here we are. I can't believe we're already ready to get going. So your thoughts just generally on the start of the 2025 Gopher softball season.
It's going to be a whole new season. We have, as all the fall sports have experienced, we have new blood into the Big Ten. And so it makes a different dynamic for softball. A lot of traditional great powerhouse schools have entered into the Big Ten. I think they're going to be more uncomfortable in the Big Ten than we are going to be having them in here. They have to do more travel. They might have to travel and play in a little bit colder places like us. And so for us, I don't think it feels any different except for we get to up our game in the Big Ten. But in the 2025, we're excited. Our student athletes, we just had a scrimmage this weekend, and I think they're ready to scrimmage someone else.
Yeah, ready to face someone in another uniform. Give me a general sense of what your perspective now on your roster is, the group of players you've now assembled as you get into the season. Strengths, places maybe you think, okay, if we can develop there, we've got a real shot to be, something special.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the circle is probably a big one. We did lose quite a bit of innings to graduation and injury last year, but we're coming back healthy. So I'm excited to kind of see what our pitchers can do in the circle. If they can keep getting better and learning and keep developing their craft, I think we're going to be a really hard team to beat come Big Tens. And then just, in the positions, whether it's infield, outfield, we do have Taylor catching, but we have a freshman in Cam who will also catch as well. So we have some young blood in some places and just getting them out there and getting them, collegiate experience.
Yeah. You mentioned to me, too, before we came on that you'll be a young team, but there's some oldness to it too. Kind of take me through that mix and that mesh point.
Yeah, we have a handful of infielders that have, played a couple years, and, they might not have the innings, but they're going to get to experience that this year. I think Sid Schwartz, she is a redshirt sophomore, but she's had quite a few innings, so you'll get to see her on the field, whether it's at first base or whether it's pitching. Our outfield is going to be probably the most veteran, as where we have Breezy and Nani out there, and then we might have some freshmen a little bit kind of show in there. But for the most part, it's going to be about getting on the field and playing some softball this weekend. As
you get ready for the start of the tournament here this weekend, you'll be in Arizona, and you've got a tough schedule, which I'll ask you about here in a little bit. But I remember asking you about this last year, just the it's one thing to play, on the indoor over here and take ground balls and take some batting practice. How quickly does the team have to now get ready to play on the dirt with the sun, with clouds, with wind, with all the factors?
Yeah, well, we were fortunate enough. We actually got to practice outside last week on Thursday. So, and then, as you said, we woke up to snow this morning. So the nice weather didn't necessarily last in Minnesota, but we have been out there a little bit. It was only about a month and a half ago that they weren't on dirt and things like that. So I don't think it's that different. It's just more about playing together and being there for each other throughout the season. So it's exciting to get out on the field. I always say training in the indoor, whether it's pitching or whether it's hitting, it's a little bit more of a vision training in there. The lights are not the sun, so whenever we come out, once we get the jitters out of the way, I really do think our hitters see beach balls. So I think sometimes training in there is a little bit more of a benefit from I've seen throughout the years.
Yeah, harder to see, and then it's easy. Then you go into a spot where it's easier to see. Maybe it can be easier to hit. I suppose nothing's easy, certainly, about hitting, particularly in softball when the ball gets on you so quickly. Were there? I know you have certain pillars that you're always going to work on in the off season, offense, defense, all that stuff. Were there anything specific to this group that you thought you wanted to hit on in the off season? And if so, what? And how did you like how they progressed?
Yeah, I think we're still learning. I want us to be gritty. I want us to be tough in there. Season's long. We have to go into other people's parks and other people's homes and play with the schedule they gave us. We get on a flight, and I think our team bodes well, and our Minnesota teams bode well when they embrace that grittiness, embrace that hard. And we do have a challenging season. The teams that we face are all very, very tough, and hopefully when we come down to the Big Ten, where you have to face someone 3 times, which is even harder to win, we have a little bit of that grit underneath us and a little bit of that, so what, we're going to be able to get kicked and kick someone right back.
Is the grittiness, how do you coach that? How do you instill that in a team in the off season?
You practice a lot, and you make practice as hard as the game, and then you don't let them sulk on anything, and you work to get over stuff. I do think sometimes, Midwest student athletes tend to have that anyways, and in softball we've kind of had a little bit of that, cultivating that culture of it, of who cares that we have to go somewhere. We had a snowstorm, and one time we had to leave at 3 a.m. just to get there and play a doubleheader, and our student athletes, they were great. They embraced it. They didn't really care. They were very tired come Sunday, but they didn't really care because they got to do the game that they loved, and they didn't see it as an obstacle. They just saw it something that we got to get to do.
Yeah, and I suppose if you're going to play softball in the Big Ten and at Minnesota, if you're not embracing that part of it, you don't give yourself much of a shot, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you got to be willing to go through that grind.
Yeah, I always say, our sport, you're always going to be uncomfortable. We don't play in a arena. We don't play, whether you're hot, whether you're cold, whether it's raining, whether whether it's a different, the sun's in your eyes. There's always some uncomfortableness that the weather provides in the game of softball, and you just have to kind of go through it and know that it's part of it. And if you're dealing with it, they're dealing with it. So there's nothing that happens that you have to deal with that the opponent doesn't have to deal with.
Right. And I suppose, too, like I would look at it, I'm looking at the schedule just as a guy who had to scrape his windshield this morning. Like, you get to go to Arizona. You get to go to California in a few weeks. You get to go to Texas or wherever else you get to go. I get it. It's a grind. You're flying commercial. You're doing all this stuff. But still, there's some value to, we get to get away and go play in warm weather.
No, absolutely. It's been some years, and it's hard to remember because I did the exact same thing that our student athletes do. But I remember as a student athlete how exciting it was that I got to go experience new places, eat food that I didn't have to come out of my, I didn't have to pay for, and just travel with your best friends. Because no other time in your life are you going to get to spend this much time and work this hard towards one common goal with this many, athletes that are like-minded like you. So I loved every moment of it as a player, and I can see the excitement of their eyes yesterday.
Yeah, and as you now embark on this, how important? Well, twofold question: how important is this part of the schedule? Not just to go try to win games, but as you mentioned, to be around the team, to build this chemistry, to create the atmosphere that you want to get to where you're playing really good when the Big Ten season starts, one, but two, while you're doing it against some really good teams. Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing is you're gonna win together and you're gonna lose together, and we do it on the road, so it's not that you get to go and go have coffee by yourself and go kind of feel sorry for yourself, or you get to experience it with your teammates. So there's a little camaraderie with that as you're on the road, and then we get to go back on a plane, and it's getting ready to how are we going to get better, and so there's a lot of conversations, there's a lot of time spent with each other of just how do we make each other better.
Yeah. And then also from that standpoint, as you guys prepare, you mentioned, and here's where I'll ask you about the schedule, because some of it was a little out of your control in terms of we've agreed to go to a tournament. You're not sure what other teams will be invited, but take me through the schedule. It looks pretty challenging when I thumb through it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on the other side, being in Minnesota, and even just being an assistant coach for as long. You never know how the season's going to play out. But what you don't want to do is not challenge yourself hard enough at the beginning. Now ask me that at the end of the season, and I might say, "Woo, we need a couple different games, maybe." But I am a big believer in, you want to go face the best if you want to be the best. So what to go back home and work on. Just kind of being in Minnesota and kind of making schedules. You don't know at the end of the season if you're going to be in the best possible spot to do what you want to do and make that run. But you have to put yourself in that, and you have to be able to schedule that, and then let the Big Ten take care of itself. So we do have some great Big Ten teams that have entered, and that's going to only help the schedule. But you never know how that Big Ten season is going to be, and I don't want to be wishing we scheduled a couple more hard games because we're having such a good season.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you don't play in an arena. That said, you do get to, again, I don't think you did last year, right? Play in the football stadium. 2 years ago, I think there was an event that you guys were able to play in the Vikings stadium. I know baseball does that as well. So one, there is one climate controlled, I guess, if you will, stretch of play there. Is that good for you? Do you like that?
Love
One, you don't
it.
have to travel. You get to stay home.
No, we love it. We get to stay in our own beds. I mean, it's a great facility. It's really cool. Our student athletes love it. I always tell them it's the biggest jumbotron your face is ever going to be on. So make sure, during your photos, you don't have zits. But we loved it, and we're excited that US Bank Stadium has welcomed Gopher softball and Gopher baseball back there, because even if it was warm enough to play, it's a really cool place to be able to say that you got to play. And all the teams love it, and I can tell you we have a big fan base because, you're getting excited about spring sports, and you get to go see softball in a dome where it is climate controlled.
Yeah, and there's I was just looking here at the schedule. The Gopher Indoor Classic, February 28th, and it gets into March 1st, and you've got St. Thomas, North Dakota State, Miami of Ohio, Wagner as part of that, as part of the group of teams there. And that's got to be kind of fun, too, because you're getting games. Because there is some risk. Sometimes you go to Louisiana, and there could be a thunderstorm rolling through, and you might only get to play 1 out of 3. But in this case, 1, you don't have to travel, and 2, it's guaranteed games.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago when we got to play in there, a lot of people had happened to travel south, and there was some rain and stuff, and so we're posting all our pictures of all our games that we get in, and I definitely had a handful of coaches say, hey, are you going to do it next year? Like, as they're sitting not getting their games in. So, when I do send those emails out, I do get to tell them that it is guaranteed.
Yeah, for sure. And then I suppose, I know you've got a good group of Minnesotans on the roster. There's probably a few of your athletes that grew up Vikings fans, and they're thinking, geez, I'm on the same field that Justin Jefferson scored a touchdown on, right?
Yes, we have quite a few Justin Jefferson fans on our team. Breezy Burnett's one of them. But it doesn't matter who you are, whether you've grown up in this state and grown up watching the Vikings, or you're from a different state. It is a great experience, and it's great for the fans and for our athletes.
And looking at the schedule as well, because of the weather, again, you're limited in terms of how many home games you get. I think you only had 12, right, last year in terms of on your own field here. So you add this group to hopefully good weather in April and May, and that it's important, right, to be good at home.
Yes, it's very important. It's important to play at home, to bring our fans at home, and we do get this US Bank Stadium tournament that we're very grateful for. And then we had a bye, and our bye happens to be at the end of in the middle of the Big Ten, in the end of it, where we are at home. So we're going to bring in Pitt, and we're going to bring in North Dakota State. So we're going to get to play that series in the middle of our Big Ten. So it's really nice.
And you've had such a great, now for a number of years, such a great community support with Gopher softball. I think it's not uncommon to have most of the season sell out before the first pitch is thrown on your own circle here in your own diamond, and that's got to be fun too, to continue to see that support.
Yes, anytime anyone, it's a great day, even whether they are really good about the weather, even if we don't have great weather, and they come out and support us. And actually, Big Ten is doing a series on, how hard it is to play at our stadium, just with the fans and the atmosphere and what it feels like to compete against us.
Let me talk about one of our sponsors real quick, and then we'll want to get more into specifics on this year's Gopher team. First, though, we want to thank Affinity Plus. They're your local credit union, proudly serving Minnesota since 1930. If you're a current Gopher student or a proud Gopher alum, that makes you eligible to join a financial that wants to build a meaningful banking relationship and put you first. You can meet with a local employee at any of their branches statewide, including right off campus on University here in Minneapolis. To learn more and find other ways to connect, go to affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. That's affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union, federally insured by NCUA. People-centered banking, perfect for Gophers. You mentioned Breezy, you mentioned Taylor. Who amongst those two, obviously included in, who will be the leadership group, do you think, that will the younger players will have to attach themselves to get to where you want to get?
Yeah, I think Sid Schwartz has come up really big. Obviously, she's a sophomore in the amount of eligibility she has left, but she is a junior. She's going to take the lead in the circle, and I think she has a lot of great things to say, and is able to keep her team under control, and they feel her presence on the mound. So it's a great feeling. I think Maggie Winter, she's a great role model, and she does everything right. So she's an upperclassman that everyone's going to look to, and we have a great group of juniors and seniors that all do the right thing and push themselves, and I think it's an easy underclass to lead as they're following exactly what they want to do.
You mentioned Sydney, and you tell me. Obviously, you're in the thick of it in terms of is she a rarity now that she can hit and play a position and pitch, or is there still a lot of that goes on around the country?
There is still quite a few pitchers that hit. I don't know how many of them actually also play the field. I do know that maybe Jordy Ball at Nebraska might be playing the field a little bit, but she'll hit and pitch. And they actually have another pitcher there that hits and pitches too. So I don't know if it's necessarily a rarity. You'll see quite a few pitchers that hit. If they play another position, I think that might be a little bit more uncommon, but Sid has done it. She's done it for her whole life, and after Delaney graduated last year, there's definitely a need for a first baseman, so she'll play some role and help us just create a better lineup with her in it.
How's the rest of the pitching staff look? Give us some names of players to watch. I know you hit the transfer portal there as well.
Yeah, so Presley's a transfer from Cal Baptist. She has an elite drop ball. When we got her, I always knew she had a changeup, but just kind of watching her work on her drop ball, it is a fantastic pitch. We keep working on making something go at least west or east, or even a little bit of north. So she does need a little bit different plane to break on, and that's going to be her main goal, as well as just keeping that ball, on the ground and letting our defense play. But if she can get another plane, she's going to be very, very hard to hit. We also have a freshman, Natalie. She's doing a really good job. She, like any freshman, the college level, whether you're hitting freshman or whether you're a pitcher, it's definitely a jump. So, you'll look for her to get in there and get some innings. But if she can put that ball where she wants it and limits her walks, I can see her getting some innings. We have Jessa Snippets. She's a local Minnesotan as well. She gave us some innings last year. If she can keep, same thing, if she can keep throwing that pitch where she wants it, she has great movement and a great off speed. So you'll see her a little bit in there. You'll see Macy Richardson. So she was probably the freshman that took a big load when we had injuries down the road last semester, and she'll be a big role for us as well. It's
hard to believe time flies. You're starting year 5 now as we get ready for the season. As we record, we'll be starting this season tomorrow on Friday. As you have now navigated your way through from pitching coach to now being the head coach, but also working with the pitcher specifically, how do you think you've grown in that role as well to make sure that, one, you have a handle on the whole thing, but two, pitching such an important part that your pitchers are hitting their peak? Yeah, I think I spend the same amount of time with the pitchers. We have more pitchers, so my time is spent a little bit more thin. When I took over, we had some injuries and some players that decided to leave, and we had 2 pitchers for entire season. I actually had to make Nani Valencia a pitcher one year, and I swore to myself I'd never, ever do that again. And so, I guess just not being single-minded and making sure that, no matter what happens, we have enough staff for whatever positions, and clearly pitching and catching is a very, very important and kind of a little harder to replace. So I think that's probably where I've grown the most, is just making sure that we have enough players for those positions and to support each other. If we have a great pitching staff, we want to make sure that, we're surrounding them with good hitters, and vice versa. If our hitters are really good that year and defense is really good, we need a
pitching staff to support them. So transitioning from being a pitching coach where I was single-minded and all I had to think about is the success of the pitchers and how to make them better, I definitely have to continually think outside that box and, what the team needs and making sure that we have enough of it.
And then, and certainly through the week, right, you're working with them, but let's say on game day then, you're in the dugout. How is that progressed in terms of keeping a handle on the whole game and then also calling pitches and making sure your pitchers are dialed in?
Yeah, I think the fact that I spend so much time in the bullpen, I know exactly what their pitches do. Yes, I've scouted the other team, but at the end of the day, you want your pitchers, you want to beat them with your best, and you want them to throw their best. So I have a really good handle on what they throw, and I don't think the pitching calling is quite as stressful as maybe it was when I was just a pitching coach. But there's so many different aspects of the game that you just have to be aware of where we're in it. We do have pitchers that will put multiple different pitchers in a game, so I do have to make sure that when I am doing that, it's the right space and the right time, and we're also looking ahead in case a pitcher has to go back in.
Yeah.
So.
And then when you're on offense, how much of a say? I mean, obviously, you have coaches that are coaching offense as well. But okay, we want to bunt here. Okay, we want to steal here. Okay, just game strategy from that point.
I'm around a lot of it. I'm around hitting quite a bit. I know our hitters pretty well.
Yeah.
So I will actually be at third base now that Carly Wynn has left. I will be at third base, and I have a pretty good knowledge of who needs a bunt and who we need to keep swinging there. And so that'll be a little bit of it. I think there's, I have staff in the dugouts that are able to manage that piece of it. I guess the biggest piece will just be making sure I'm communicating enough with my pitchers because I've always used the dugout to communicate with them.
Yeah. So are you excited about being a third? Yeah.
I am. I love to call the pitches and get the pitches that the other pitchers throwing. I realize that I can't spend as much time doing that because there's a hitter in the box and I have to pay attention to what they're doing. But that was probably my biggest adjustment this fall is I can't stare down the pitcher and get every sign that they give us. So
yeah. So okay, this is going to be a really weird question. Will you practice that in terms of, all right, there's a runner on second, hit to the outfield, send or hold? Like how will you?
Yeah, we do a ton of base running in practice. So I know what our athletes can do. Also with scouting, they've got real arms or their arms are a little weaker, and who can go on what throws. So I think it's a big thing of if you're around the game enough and you constantly read balls off the bat, then you kind of know what your athlete's speed is and what they can do and what they can't.
Is your hunch that you'll be citing aggressively or conservatively?
It just depends on the players. It depends on the game.
Specific
the
situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. That's kind of fun. I'll look forward to watching that part of it. You mentioned a little bit of a staff change. How do you like how the staff is coming together now?
Good. I think we're Coach Roy is new and she has a little different concept with hitting, and I think it's been blending really well with our student athletes. I think the biggest important thing is you get those really good hitters and you just keep nurturing them so hitting's hard and making sure that they feel confident and going into that box and that they can hit anything. And so I think part of it is a relationship build as much as it's teaching them how to hit something. It's just going through the ebbs and flows just like it is pitching. Going through the ebbs and flows and giving them helping them with their confidence and getting them to perform when they're in the circle or they're in the box.
You mentioned the Big Ten. For most sports, it's 4 new teams. I'm still figuring out how USC does not have softball, but they don't. So it's 3 really good teams. We're talking UCLA, Oregon, and Washington, all, I think, right, have won national titles or contended for national titles in recent years. So what's that addition mean to the league and just generally the landscape nationally?
I mean, yes, nationally, obviously, we always go the West Coast, so it's not that much different. But for us and just the competitive nature of Big Ten softball, I think it's really, really important. We definitely have the largest softball conference now, so it's a lot of teams. It'll be a little bit more unique in the sense of I don't know how many years we'll go before we won't play someone,
right?
Which I think that's a real a real thing now, and maybe it won't feel like you're in the Big Ten with them if you never play them, but you always have the Big Ten tournament. So I'm excited to see kind of what all happens with it, but it is big, and I'm excited to see those teams in it.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm just looking at the schedule here. You have Oregon. That'll be April. It could be chilly. Now, Oregon isn't like California where it seems to be always warm, but I'm eager to see how UCLA will respond playing in Minneapolis or Madison or Ann Arbor or Piscataway on a April day that's, 31 degrees.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is they've never had to, besides it, they've gone to Utah. So they had, in the pack, they had the Utah. But they've never had to really kind of think about the weather and the best interest of the student athletes. And so I do think it's going to be different for them at the end of the day. But I've had a couple, being at Minnesota and just kind of going through that transition, and even watching, helping Jamie Traxel with that transition when she was in the Big Ten, and you had to make decisions on where to play, move it, do you move it, do you not move it, what happens with the weather, is it going to change? I think all you can do is make a decision, and regardless of the outcome, you have to be able to sleep at night, and so it's a hard one because, your student athletes want to play, but you also don't want them to play in bad weather, or, if you do play a doubleheader, what if it doesn't rain on Sunday? And that's happened to me, and you kind of kick your butt, especially if it's not the outcome that you want, and you wake up and it's sunny and stuff, but you have to be able to be okay with whatever decision you make. And I do think it's going to be an interesting transition for those sports, or for those teams coming from where they do. Now, Washington and Oregon probably have a little bit of it because they deal with rain, and do you play, do you not play? And I'm sure rain is in and out there, just as it is in Minnesota. But you have to lean on the home team because they know their weather the best, and you just have to make the best educated decision. I always say you have to wait as long as possible because we're not predictors of weather, but you wait as long as possible as the staff and the department will let you, and then you just make that decision and you live with it. Yeah, and then you go from there. The one of the interesting things, obviously, you concern yourself with, you want to win today's game, you want to win tomorrow's game, you focus on that. But have you taken a second to think about nationally what the landscape looks like? There is no Pac-12, right? Yeah.
Some of those really good teams are now in the Big 12, and we'll see where that goes. 3 of those teams are now in the Big 10, and then you look at our friend Jessica Allister, who they're in the ACC now, right? They're going to be playing road games all the way across the country. So I wonder how that will impact one, just the landscape, but two, selection. The selection of the teams that get to the NCAA tournament. The Pac-12 is just no longer in existence.
Well, let's be real. Minnesota, the selection show for softball hasn't been the best one ever.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily, I would say, making the best decisions in the sport aspect of it. Not like you maybe see. I think they've in the past have relied too heavily on RPI, but there is a KPI that basketball uses as well. So hopefully they'll take that into consideration. But I don't really ever, you don't love the selection committee. You don't love it when, they're in charge of making those decisions, especially on whether it's bubble teams hosting or if it's bubble teams getting in. But all you can do is put yourself in the best possible position to do what you need to do, and you just can't get that wrapped up in it because it is kind of. It sometimes it seems like it's a coin flip that they're making a decision.
Yeah, well, the Gopher. Not to go down that road, but we felt a couple of the wrong ends of those things over the years for sure. I've got a couple more quick questions. I want to read one more sponsor mention here. Ice fishing is here. It's time to hit the frozen water with OnX Fish. It's the fish app and the most comprehensive fishing tool for increasing your confidence on ice. Use OnX Fish to find new places to fish. You can sort by lake, species, abundance, trophy, and keeper potentials. OnX Fish also shows you hot spots, lake by lake regulations, private and public land ownership, all kinds of great info. And for a limited time, download OnX Fish for free in Minnesota and Wisconsin. Go to onxmaps.com/fish to get more information on the app that is changing the game on ice. onxmaps.com/fish. Couple of quick questions to wrap up our podcast here, and our thanks to Piper Ritter, episode 156. We've kind of previewed the year, talked about your hopes and your dreams. I do want to ask about the changing landscape just generally of college athletics, and we could probably do a whole hour podcast on it, but let's get the Cliff Notes version here. Transfer portal, name, image, and likeness, roster limits changing, all of those things. I'll ask just a softball, no pun intended, question first. What are your general thoughts on the state of softball right now with all of the changes?
I think it's going to be across the board completely different for some people. I think you can put a couple of those sports in that they're all going to be kind of in some of that revenue sharing, doing some of that stuff. And I think softball, it's not across the board. I think there'll be some that'll be doing it, some that won't be doing it, some that might even get less than what they have right now. So I just think when that happens, you're going to just see a big disparity in competition and maybe level of play. I just hope at the end of the day it doesn't stop people from playing the sport of softball,
right? That
our numbers don't go down. I can't think too much of it. I can't wrap my head around it. All I can be where my feet are and, commit to Minnesota and try to make Minnesota the best they can be with whatever we have in front of us. So my biggest fear of this change in landscape is I hope they're on the rise. They're on the rise for women's sports in general. I just hope at one point in time it never goes down.
Right. And just generally the programs stay alive, right?
Yes.
I mean, at some point, there, who knows where it's all heading with some of the top end money grab for sure, and then where does that leave the rest of us, I guess, for lack of a better term? Have you found that your own, as there are changes, how you try to stay on it, that you've changed thoughts on, do I recruit fewer high schoolers? Do I recruit off of other teams when they enter the portal? Or do you just go about handling it day to day?
I just try to find the best softball players that want to play at the University of Minnesota, that buy into our culture, buy into what we're trying to do here, want to get a great education. And that's kind of where I go with it. I mean, sometimes we have better luck in the transfer portal. Sometimes it's a certain area in high school ball. I don't know. I want to get the best softball players that want to sustain our culture and want to go as far as we can here. But I don't know if it changes too much.
Yeah.
It's just there's a big lake to choose from, and you just kind of can't get muddled in the weeds.
Yeah, and accumulate the best players you can and meld them together for sure. Are there some opportunities for name, image, and likeness for your players currently?
Yes, there are.
And so are you okay? I mean, generally pleased, or would you like to see more?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think in the state of Minnesota, I think just not that I want to compare ourselves to other people, but I'd be remiss to not say if we can't keep up. We can't fall too far behind. And so I'd love to see our student athletes get more opportunity to get name, image, and likeness here at the University of Minnesota. And every day, I think sometimes my job is less about teaching them how to pitch, teaching them how to play softball, and more about how can I get them more money.
Yeah, isn't that something, the way it goes? And there is a good community of softball supporters.
Yes,
we talked
absolutely.
about it earlier, that there can be opportunity.
Yes.
I think back, and I don't want to get totally off subject, but when the run in 2019 happened, like if name, image, and likeness happened, Amber Pfizer would have cashed in some pretty good money at that point, right? I mean,
we had a handful of players that were very good, and obviously Amber had a brand, and she wore that brand well, and she would have. It's kind of I even Sarah Groenwagen in that era.
True,
I could kind of go down the line, Autumn Peace, that type of thing, and Natalie Din Hartog being a hometown kid. A lot of student athletes who would have cashed in the name, image, and likeness.
Yeah.
So
let's hope that this year there's enough really good performances that they are able to do so.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, hey, the season's upon us. It starts tomorrow. Always appreciate it. I know it's a busy time for you. You're traveling out this afternoon, so thanks for stopping by the studio and spending some time with us.
Yes, thank you.
All right, Piper Ritter's our guest. It's episode 156. My thanks to Gopher softball head coach Piper Ritter for joining me on this week's Go Gopher podcast. A lot to be excited about, and I'm thankful she shared her thoughts on her team during this busy busy week. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I enjoyed being a part of it. Episode 156 is presented by Sunbelt Business Advisors and True North Mergers and Acquisitions. If you're buying or selling a business, visit sunbeltminnesota.com or tnma.com today. We're also partnered with Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union, a locally member-owned full-service financial invested in you. You can learn more at affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. OnX Maps also sponsors our show. Again, I'd invite you to listen to past podcasts, and please right now click that subscribe button to the Go Gopher Podcast. It's free to listen and free to subscribe. And please be sure to share that link to the podcast with others so they can subscribe and listen as well. And if you enjoyed the podcast, let us know. Give us some positive feedback on your social media channels. We'll talk again next week.